On New Year's Eve, in front of 200 guests, my own daughter kicked me out into minus 15 degrees Fahrenheit snow and said, "There is no place here for freeloaders. Go outside and learn gratitude." I stood barefoot in 8 inches of snow. My feet went numb. My lungs burned with every breath. I truly believed I might die on that porch. They thought I would apologize and beg to be let back inside, but they never expected what would happen next. When a luxury Rolls-Royce pulled up to the curb, a powerful woman stepped forward, took my hand and said, "You're safe now. I will help you." Within 1 hour, everything they had would collapse. Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here. I truly appreciate you taking the time to listen. Before we continue, leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories reach. Also, please note this story includes some fictional elements created for storytelling and educational purposes. Any similarity to specific names or places is coincidental, but the message behind it is meant to resonate. My name is Eleanor Pembroke. I am 57 years old. 10 minutes before midnight on New Year's Eve, I stood barefoot in 8 inches of snow, locked outside my own home in negative 15 degrees Fahrenheit. I thought I was alone. I was wrong. The cold bit through the thin black dress I had been wearing to serve 200 guests. My feet had gone numb somewhere between the porch steps and the front door, and now I could no longer feel my toes. The porch light cast long shadows across the driveway, illuminating the fresh snow that had fallen throughout the evening. Inside, through the frosted window beside the door, I could see the golden glow of chandeliers, the movement of silk and cashmere, the flash of champagne flutes raised in laughter. My daughter stood framed in that window. Amber wore a red dress that cost more than I used to spend on groceries in 6 months. Diamonds glittered at her throat. Her makeup was flawless. She was laughing at something her husband Blake had just said, her head thrown back in a way that looked effortless and expensive. She did not look toward the door. She did not look toward me. 10 minutes earlier, I had been inside that warmth. I had been clearing empty glasses guests had left on side tables, wiping down spills in the hallway, running upstairs to fetch extra napkins when the catering staff ran short. The professional servers moved through the crowd with trays of champagne. I moved behind them, cleaning up what they missed. My back ached. My feet ached. I had been working since 6 that morning, preparing food, polishing, silver arranging flowers. When the guests began to arrive at 7, I had changed into the black dress Amber had left on my bed, with a note that read, "Wear this. Stay in the kitchen unless I call you." I had stayed in the kitchen. I had stayed silent. I had done everything she asked. But then, as midnight approached, I had made a mistake. I had walked into the living room searching for a place to sit down just for a moment. My legs were shaking. The noise and heat of the party had become overwhelming. I thought perhaps there might be a chair in the corner somewhere out of the way. Amber had seen me. Her expression had shifted instantly, her smile vanishing, her eyes narrowing. "Where is my seat?" I had asked quietly. The words had come out before I could stop them. Is there somewhere I can sit down? The room had not gone silent. The music had not stopped. But the guests nearest to us had turned their conversations, trailing off their gazes, shifting between Amber and me. Amber had stepped forward. Her voice had been calm, measured loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "There is no seat here for freeloaders," she had said. "Your presence is ruining the elegance of this event. Go outside and sober up. When you learn gratitude, when you learn how to respect the owners of this house, then maybe we will let you back in." The owners of this house. She'd called herself the owner of the house I had lived in for 35 years. I had not been drinking. Everyone in that room knew it, but no one had said anything. No one had moved. Amber had taken my arm, her grip tight enough to bruise, and she had walked me to the front door. Blake had opened it. The cold had rushed in sharp and brutal. Amber had pushed me onto the porch, and the door had closed behind me. The lock had clicked. Now I leaned against the porch railing, my vision beginning to blur at the edges. My hands were blue. I could not stop shaking. I tried the door handle again, knowing it would not turn, knowing it was useless. Through the window, I could see Amber raising her glass, her smile back in place, as if nothing had happened, as if I had never been inside at all. I thought that was the worst moment of my life. being called a freeloader by my own daughter in front of 200 guests on New Year's Eve, 10 minutes before midnight. I was wrong, because what happened next at 3 minutes past midnight when headlights swept across the snow would change everything. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back 7 years, to the day my husband died, and to the day my daughter began building the cage I would live in until this New Year's Eve. Before I go on, if you have ever been dismissed by the people you sacrificed everything for, by the family you gave your whole life to, I need you to know this story is for you. Charles collapsed in our kitchen on a Tuesday morning in March. The coffee maker had just finished brewing. I heard the sound of his body hitting the tile before I saw him. By the time the paramedics arrived, he was already gone. A heart attack. He was 60 years old. We had been married for 35 years. He had designed buildings all over Connecticut, small libraries and community centers, with clean lines and large windows that let in as much light as possible. He used to say that architecture was about creating spaces where people felt safe. He had built that kind of space for me, for us, at 127 Willow Creek Lane in a house filled with books and plants, and the drawings Emily had started making in preschool taped to the refrigerator with alphabet magnets. The funeral happened 2 weeks later. I remember very little of it. I stood beside the casket in a black dress I had borrowed from a neighbor because I could not bring myself to go shopping. Amber stood beside me, her hand on my shoulder, greeting mourners with a soft voice and a composed expression. People told me how lucky I was to have such a devoted daughter. I believed them. Charles had always been careful. He had left me a trust fund worth $850,000. So you'll always be safe, he had said years earlier when he first set it up. The fund generated a monthly income of nearly $4,000, enough to cover the mortgage, utilities, groceries, and anything else I might need. Charles had explained it all to me once, but I had never paid close attention. He had always handled the finances. I had always trusted him to take care of it. After he died, I could not bring myself to open the statements that arrived in the mail. I could not bring myself to call the bank. I spent most of my days sitting in the living room staring at the chair where Charles used to read in the evenings. Amber came by often during those first few weeks. She brought groceries. She made tea. She sat with me when I could not stop crying. 1 month after the funeral, Amber and Blake came to visit. Emily toddled around the living room, her small hands reaching for the framed photographs on the side table. Amber sat down beside me on the couch and took my hand. "Mom," she said gently, "you shouldn't be here alone. Let us move in. We can help you. Emily needs her grandmother." I had not wanted to be alone. The house felt too large, too quiet, too full of memories that made it hard to breathe. I said yes. They moved in 2 weeks later. Amber took over the guest bedroom. Blake set up a small office in the den. Emily's crib went into the room that used to be Amber's when she was young. At first it felt like a relief. There were voices in the house again. There was movement, laughter, the sound of Emily's toys scattered across the floor. Amber began helping me with paperwork. Bills arrived and she opened them. Bank statements came and she filed them away. "Don't worry about this, Mom," she would say. "I'll take care of it." I signed forms she placed in front of me, forms with words I did not read carefully because my hands were shaking and my vision blurred every time I tried to focus. "It's just trust stuff," she would say. "I'm handling it." I trusted her. She was my daughter. She had always been bright, capable, organized. I thought she was protecting me. 6 months after Charles died, Amber brought me a stack of documents and a pen. "Just a few more signatures, Mom," she said. "We're updating the utility bills and some account access so I can help manage things for you." I signed my name at the bottom of each page. My handwriting looked shaky, unfamiliar. Amber smiled and gathered the papers quickly, sliding them into a folder before I could ask any questions. "All done," she said. I did not know what I had signed. I would not know for 7 years. That signature, my name written in a trembling hand 3 months after Charles died, would cost me $850,000. But I would not discover that until much later. By then I would have far bigger problems than money. By then I would know what it felt like to become invisible in my own home. The cage did not appear overnight. It was built one small lock at a time so slowly that I did not realize I was trapped until it was far too late. "In the beginning," Amber asked, Would I mind cooking dinner? Could I help tidy up after Emily went to bed? The requests felt reasonable. I was grateful to have purpose again, grateful to feel useful in a house that had become too quiet after Charles died. I said yes every time. By the second year, she stopped asking. She simply expected. Colleagues of Blake's came over for dinner, and I cooked and served and cleared plates while they talked about promotions and vacation homes. Amber did not introduce me. When one of the guests asked who I was, she smiled and said, "Oh, that's my mom. She's helping out." Helping out. As if I were a temporary visitor, as if this were not my home. By the third year, I no longer had a seat at the table. Thanksgiving dinner arrived, and I set out plates for 8 people. I had spent 2 days preparing the meal. When everyone sat down, I looked for my chair. There was none. Amber glanced up and said, "Mom, can you get more wine? We're talking business." I ate alone in the kitchen, standing by the counter while laughter drifted in from the dining room. By the 4th year, I had stopped leaving the house. I had a friend, Margaret, who used to call and invite me to lunch. One afternoon, I mentioned it to Amber. "I think I'll go see Margaret tomorrow," I said. Amber's expression shifted. "I need you here, Mom. Emily's not feeling well." Emily was fine. She was playing in the next room, humming to herself. But I stayed. Margaret stopped calling after a few months. By the 5th year, I realized I no longer received bank statements in the mail. I asked Amber about it. "I'm managing everything, Mom," she said. "It's easier this way." I did not push. I did not know what questions to ask. By the 6th year, I found something I thought I had lost. A small brooch worth $67 that Charles had given me on our 20th anniversary. I had kept it in a drawer wrapped in tissue paper. One afternoon, I opened the drawer and it was there again. I held it in my palm, remembering the way Charles had smiled when he gave it to me. The next month, it vanished. I asked Amber if she had seen it. She looked at me with wide, wounded eyes. "I had to pawn it, Mom," she said quietly, "for Emily's school fees. I didn't want to worry you. I thought you'd understand." I apologized. I told her it was fine. I went to my room and cried. By the 7th year, I had become a ghost. I cooked every meal. I cleaned every room. I did laundry and grocery shopping and scrubbed floors until my knees ached. No one thanked me. No one looked at me. Amber only called me Mom when she needed something. I had a mother of my own, Florence. We had been distant for years, even before Charles died. After I married, we spoke perhaps twice a year, brief phone calls on birthdays and holidays. 6 months after Charles passed, Amber told me that Florence had called. "Grandma moved to Europe," Amber said. She said staying in touch right now would be too painful. She needs space. I believed her. I did not try to call. I thought my mother had chosen to leave me behind. I did not know that Florence had been writing to me. I did not know that she had sent 91 letters over 7 years, every one of them returned unopened. I did not know that she had hired investigators to find me. I did not know that she had never stopped looking. In December of that 7th year, Amber announced that she and Blake would be hosting a New Year's Eve party. 200 guests. "Mom," she said, "I need you to handle everything. Cooking, decorating, all of it." I worked for 7 days straight. I prepared 20 dishes. I folded napkins by hand. I arranged fresh flowers in every room. I did it because I thought that if the party was perfect, Amber might finally see me. I thought she might finally love me again. I was foolish. Because when the party began, I understood that I was not a guest. I was the help. And when I asked for a seat at the table, everything fell apart. While I was learning to disappear, someone 100 miles away in Stonehaven was searching for me. Someone who had never given up. My mother, Florence Whitmore, had raised me at 42 Ashwood Terrace in a house filled with books and light. We'd been close once before I married Charles. After the wedding, the distance between us grew. We spoke twice a year, brief calls on birthdays and holidays. I told myself it was natural. I told myself we were both busy. When Charles died, Florence heard the news from an old friend. She tried to call me. The number had been disconnected. She drove to 127 Willow Creek Lane and knocked on the door. No one answered, though Amber watched from the window upstairs. Florence left a note. Amber threw it away. Florence did not stop. Over the next 3 years, she hired a private investigator. The investigator searched for records under my name. He found utility bills listed under Blake Hendricks. He found nothing under Eleanor Pembroke. Florence hired a second investigator. That one checked hospital records and vehicle registrations. I had not driven in years. There was no trail to follow. Florence began writing letters. She sent them to the only address she had, the old house at 42 Ashwood Terrace, where I had lived as a young woman. The post office forwarded them to my current address. Amber intercepted everyone. She returned them unopened, marked moved, no forwarding address. Over 7 years, Florence sent 91 letters. 91 times they came back. By the 5th year, Florence's health began to decline. She was 77 years old. Friends told her it was time to let go, that perhaps I had chosen to cut ties. Florence did not believe them. She hired a third investigator, younger this time, someone who understood digital tools. That investigator found Blake's professional profile online and traced it to an address in Ashford Hills. He watched the house for 2 weeks. He never saw me leave. The case went cold again. Florence thought about giving up. She thought about accepting that she might never see me again. But she could not. In early December, a friend from her church mentioned seeing someone named Eleanor Pembroke at a grocery store. Florence hired one more investigator doctor, Lydia Mitchell, a woman with a background in elder care fraud. Dr. Mitchell began quietly asking questions. 3 days before New Year's Eve, Carol Winters attended a church event in Stonehaven. She overheard a conversation about a woman named Florence Whitmore searching for her daughter, Eleanor. Carol froze. Eleanor Pembroke was her neighbor. She had watched me for years, carrying groceries alone, never speaking to anyone, always moving quickly back inside the house. She had thought something was wrong, but she had not known what to do. Carol asked for Florence's phone number. The next morning, December 30th, Carol called. "Mrs. Whitmore," she said, "I think I know where Eleanor is. 127 Willow Creek Lane. But something is very wrong." Florence hung up the phone. Her hands were shaking. She called Raymond Harper, her real estate attorney. "I need you to pull property records for 127 Willow Creek Lane," she said. "Right now." 2 hours later, Raymond called back. His voice was quiet. "Florence," he said, "you own it. You purchased it in 1992. Charles never transferred the deed." Florence stared at the address written on the paper in front of her. 127 Willow Creek Lane. Something about it had been pulling at her, something she could not quite remember. Now she understood. She had bought that house 31 years ago as a wedding gift for me and Charles. She had intended to transfer the deed later, but life had moved quickly. Charles had refinanced the mortgage under his own name. She had assumed the title had changed hands. It had not. For 7 years, while she searched, I had been living in her house, and she had not known. Florence made 2 phone calls. The first was to Raymond. "I need you ready on New Year's Eve," she said. "Bring all the documents." The second was to Dr. Mitchell. "I have a job for you," she said. "There's a party at 127 Willow Creek Lane. I need you inside. Record everything." Whatever was happening to her daughter, it was about to end. December 24th, 7 days before New Year's Eve, Amber handed me a list. 200 guests, Mom, she said. Blake's CEO will be there, board members. Everything has to be perfect. I looked at the list. Appetizers, entrees, desserts, decorations, place settings. My hands were already aching just reading it. Something inside me whispered a question I had been avoiding for years. Why was my name not on the guest list? Christmas came the next day. There was no celebration for me. I spent the morning in the kitchen organizing supply lists and coordinating with the catering company Amber had hired. Amber, Blake, and Emily opened presents in the living room. I was not invited. Emily ran into the kitchen holding a drawing she had made, a crayon sketch of the 2 of us holding hands. "Merry Christmas, Grandma," she said. Amber appeared in the doorway. "Don't bother her," she snapped. Emily's face fell. She turned and walked away. I realized then that my granddaughter did not know I was allowed to celebrate holidays. The next 3 days blurred together. I worked constantly polishing silver scrubbing floors, preparing signature dishes Amber insisted I make myself, while the catering company handled the rest. My hands shook from exhaustion. Amber inspected a tort I had spent 4 hours perfecting. "This is uneven," she said. "Fix it." I was 57 years old. I had cooked thousands of meals. She spoke to me as if I were incompetent. On the 29th, I began decorating. The Christmas tree stood over 11 feet tall. I arranged fresh flowers in every room. I folded 200 napkins by hand. I set out place cards for each guest. As I arranged them on the table, I noticed something. There was no card with my name. I found Amber in the hallway. "Where will I sit?" I asked. She barely looked up from her phone. "You'll be helping Mom," she said. "You won't need a seat." I stared at her. "I'm not a guest." She sighed, irritated. "Don't make this dramatic." I said nothing, but something inside me cracked. On the 30th, I finished the final preparations. I polished silver. I set the table. I counted 200 place settings, 200 name cards. Not one of them said Eleanor Pembroke. I sat alone in the kitchen that evening, my hands resting on the counter. I had been erased. In the house I had lived in for 35 years, I had been erased. That night I walked through the rooms I had decorated. The tree glittered with lights. The table looked elegant. The champagne bottles, each one expensive, lined the bar. Amber walked past me. "Good work, Mom," she said. "Tomorrow night, try not to get in the guests' way." I stood there after she left, staring at the table. Tomorrow night, 200 people would celebrate in my home, and I would have no seat. I would serve, as always. But this time, something was different. Perhaps I was simply too tired, or perhaps I had finally woken up. I made a decision. Tomorrow night, I would ask. I would ask for a seat. Even if Amber said no, even if it caused a scene, I would ask. I did not tell anyone about that decision. I did not tell Amber. I did not listen to the voice in my head screaming at me not to make trouble. I went to bed that night and lay awake until 3 in the morning, my heart pounding. I did not know that asking for a seat would nearly cost me everything. I did not know that my daughter's answer would send me into the cold. I did not know that at 3 minutes past midnight the following night, my entire life would change. All I knew was that I was tired of being invisible, and that decision was the thing that saved me. December 31st, 7 in the evening. The doorbell rang. The first guests had arrived. I stood ready to serve wearing a plain black dress, the kind you wear when you do not want to be noticed. But tonight, for some reason, I wanted to be seen, just once. The guests flooded in. I stood by the door taking coats, hanging them in the closet, carrying armloads upstairs when the closet filled. No one said thank you. Amber greeted each arrival with a bright smile. "That's my mom," she said to one couple, gesturing toward me. "She's helping out tonight." Not "this is my mom," just helping out. By 8, the house was full. Professional servers in crisp uniforms moved through the rooms with trays of appetizers, toasted bread with salmon, shrimp cocktail, stuffed mushrooms. I stayed in the kitchen washing dishes as they came back, wiping down counters, refilling ice buckets. When a server dropped a tray near the stairs, Amber snapped at me to clean it up. I got down on my knees with a towel while guests stepped around me. Dr. Lydia Mitchell, a woman I had never seen before, found me in the kitchen as I scrubbed a stack of plates. "Excuse me," she said. "Did you prepare the food tonight?" I blinked, surprised. "Some of it," I said. "The tort and a few other dishes." She smiled. "You're very talented." It was the first compliment I had received in years. She adjusted the pin on her collar and moved back into the crowd. Carol Winters arrived around 8:30. She found me in the hallway and touched my arm. "Eleanor," she said quietly, "are you okay?" I nodded automatically. "I'm fine, Carol." She hesitated. "Have you eaten anything tonight? Do you have a seat?" I stopped. "I don't think so," I said. Her face fell. By 9:30, the catering staff worked quickly in the kitchen, plating dinners from the dishes I had prepared earlier. I stood at the sink, washing pans, scrubbing baking sheets, my hands shaking from exhaustion. Sweat dripped down my back. Blake walked in to grab another bottle of wine. He did not look at me. At 11, the guests sat down at 25 tables spread across the dining room and living room. The catering staff moved efficiently, serving plates, refilling wine glasses. I stayed in the kitchen, clearing dirty dishes. The servers brought back scraping plates into the trash, loading the dishwasher. Through the doorway, I watched. Everyone had a seat. Everyone was eating food I had helped prepare. I saw an empty chair at one of the tables. I had not been invited to sit in it. The clock on the wall read 11:28. In 2 minutes, I would turn 58, and I was standing in the kitchen, invisible. I thought about the decision I had made the night before. I thought about the question I had promised myself I would ask. I looked at the empty chair again. No, not tonight. At 11:30, I walked into the dining room. I stood at the edge of one of the tables. Amber noticed. Her smile faltered. "Mom," she said, "do you need something?" My heart pounded. My voice shook, but I made myself speak. "Where is my seat?" The room did not go silent immediately, but several people turned to look. Amber's jaw tightened. "Not now, Mom," she said quietly. I spoke louder. "I worked 7 days for this party. I prepared the food. I decorated this house. Where is my seat?" Now the room went silent. 200 faces turned toward me. Amber stood, her face flushing red. I had asked a simple question, a question anyone would ask. Where is my seat? 7 words, that was all. And the answer my daughter gave in front of 200 people at 11:31 on New Year's Eve would haunt me for the rest of my life. But it would also free me. My daughter stood up, slowly, deliberately, as if she were taking her time to choose her words. 200 people held their breath, waiting. I thought perhaps she would feel ashamed. Perhaps she would simply say, "Sit anywhere, Mom." I was so very wrong. Amber looked at me. Not the way a daughter looks at a mother, the way someone looks at something broken. She said, "A seat for you." She laughed, a cold, theatrical laugh. "Mom, let me make this very clear, because you seem confused about your place here. There is no seat here for freeloaders." The word hit me like a slap. Freeloader. For people who only take and give nothing back. People who live off our generosity, eat our food. I tried to speak. "I cooked this, and that is the only reason we tolerate you." Her voice rose. "Look around, Mom. This is elegance. This is success. This is what Blake and I have built. And your presence." She gestured at me, her hand sweeping up and down. "Your presence is ruining the elegance of this entire event. Standing here, looking pathetic, demanding a seat like you're somebody, like you matter." My throat closed. I could not breathe. "Amber," I whispered, "I'm your mother. You are a burden. That is all you are." Blake stood, 6'2", former athlete. I was 5'4", 130 pounds, 57 years old. Amber turned to him. "Get her out of here," she said. I can't look at her for another second. I stepped back. "Blake, please, it's -15 degrees outside." His eyes went cold. "Don't make a scene. Don't make this worse." He moved toward me. "Go outside, stand in that cold and sober up. Think about what you've done." I had not been drinking. I had not had a single sip, but he said it loud enough for everyone to hear. When you learn gratitude, when you learn how to be thankful that we didn't throw you onto the street, when you learn how to respect the owners of this house, then you can knock. Then maybe we'll let you back in. Owners. She had called herself the owner of the house I had lived in for 35 years. Blake grabbed my arm, his fingers dug into my skin. "Let's go," he said quietly, threateningly. I pulled back. "Blake, it's freezing." "You heard her. Go cool off. When you know your place, you can knock. We'll decide if you deserve to come back in." He dragged me toward the door. My heels scraped across the hardwood floor I had polished 2 days earlier. I grabbed the doorframe. "Amber, please." She turned away, picked up her champagne glass, took a sip. 200 people stared. Carol Winters stood. "This is wrong. She could—" Blake turned, his voice full of authority. "Carol, please, this is a family matter. She'll knock when she's ready." Amber dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. A perfect performance. "We love Mom, but she needs to learn this lesson." Carol sat back down, looked at her lap. I understood then. No one was going to help me. Blake opened the front door. The cold rushed in like a wall. Wind, snow, the kind of cold that steals your breath. "Out," he said. I I looked back, toward the dining room, the warm light, the food I had prepared, the people who had eaten it. No one stood up. Blake shoved hard. I stumbled. My heel caught the doorframe. My ankle twisted. Both shoes slipped off. They stayed inside. I was barefoot? Blake! He stepped back, slammed the door. I heard the sound, the deadbolt turning into place. Click. It was 11:50. I stood on that porch, barefoot, in a thin black dress, snow up to my ankles. Inside, the music started again. Laughter. Someone shouted, 10 minutes until midnight, and I was locked out. The snow burned my feet. Then the burning stopped. Then I felt nothing at all. I looked through the window. Amber was laughing, Blake's arm around her waist. 200 people raising their glasses, and I thought this is how it ends. Alone. On New Year's Eve, called a freeloader by the daughter I had sacrificed everything for. I was wrong. I was not alone. Because at 11:52, 25 miles away in a car, someone received a message. It read, "She's locked outside, -15 degrees. Come now." And the woman who read that message, an 80-year-old woman with white hair and an iron will, said to her driver, "Franklin, drive faster." Cold like that, the kind that reaches -15 degrees, does not just hurt. It erases you. Slowly. Then all at once. I tried the door first, knocked softly, then harder. "Amber, please." No one came. The music inside got louder, drowning out the sound of my fists against the wood. I stopped, looked down at my feet. They were red, then white, then blue. I understood then. This was not a lesson. This was punishment. I tried to stay standing, shifted my weight from one foot to the other, but both feet had gone numb. I grabbed the porch railing. Metal, frozen. My hand stuck to it. Through the window, I saw Amber talking to a woman in a silver dress, smiling. I heard her voice muffled but clear. "Mom hasn't been well lately. Memory issues. We're trying to help, but tonight she had an episode." An episode? She called this an episode. My legs gave out. I slid down along the railing, sat in the snow. It soaked through the dress, pressed ice against my thighs. I tried to curl into myself. I could not stop shaking. My teeth chattered so hard I bit my tongue. Tasted blood. I thought about Charles, our wedding day. "Welcome home, Ellie," he had said. I wondered if he knew what our daughter had become. Inside, someone shouted, 2 minutes until midnight. Cheering, champagne corks popping. My eyes closed. My vision had already begun to blur. 10:08. I thought I am 57 years old. I will not make it to 58. 7-6-5-4-3-2-1 Happy New Year. Fireworks burst. Flashes of light. Inside, people kissed, hugged, celebrated. Outside, I was fading. After midnight, the shivering stopped. That was a bad sign. My body was giving up. I opened my eyes, looked up at the stars. So many. So beautiful. I thought about the question, where is my seat? 7 words, and it had brought me to this. But I did not regret it. For 7 years, I had been silent. Tonight, for 3 minutes, I had truly existed. I had used my voice. If this was the end, at least I had spoken. My eyes closed. My body tipped sideways into the snow. Then headlights. Bright. So bright I thought, is this it? Is this what the end looks like? But the light did not fade. It came closer. An engine. Deep. Powerful. Expensive. I forced my eyes open. Turned my head. A car. Black. Long. Gleaming. Not an ordinary car. A Rolls-Royce. It pulled up to the curb. Stopped. The engine still running. The back door opened, and a woman stepped out. She was 80 years old. White hair pulled into a high bun fastened with a silver pin. A long ivory coat, expensive. Her left hand held a cane, but she barely leaned on it. She moved like someone who had spent a lifetime being listened to, because she deserved to be. And when she saw me collapsed in the snow, shivering, barely conscious, her face changed in a way I had not seen in anyone for 7 years. It broke, just for a second. Then it hardened into something that made me think God help anyone who stands in her way. She walked toward me, fast, faster than an 80-year-old should be able to, and she said one word, a word I had not heard in so long. Eleanor. Not Mom, not a title, my name. And I knew who she was. Franklin. The woman's voice cut through the cold like a blade, sharp, urgent. Get her in the car, now. Franklin, the driver, reached me in 3 strides. He did not ask permission. He lifted me up. I've got you, he said quietly. You're safe now. Safe. The word sounded foreign. Inside the Rolls-Royce, it was warm. The heater blasted hot air, leather seats, a wool blanket wrapped around me immediately. The woman slid in beside me, took my hand. Eleanor, can you hear me? I nodded. Tried to speak. My jaw would not move. A man in the front seat turned. Raymond Harper, attorney. I have first aid training. May I check your vitals? He pulled out a small medical kit. A thermometer beeped. 94.3 Fahrenheit. Mild hypothermia. Dangerous, but not critical yet. He examined my feet. I felt nothing. First-degree frostbite. Painful, but treatable. No blackening. You're lucky. He looked at the woman. She needs medical attention. Not life-threatening immediately, but we should go. The woman nodded. Franklin, Stonehaven Medical Center. Fastest route. Stonehaven Medical Center. A 24-hour clinic. Small, clean, nearly empty. Dr. Sarah Coleman. Efficient. Kind eyes. She examined me quickly. Temperature 94.6, rising. The heat in the car helped a lot. She checked my feet. I winced as sensation began returning. First-degree frostbite. Will rewarm slowly. No permanent damage. You're very fortunate. 15 more minutes and we'd be facing irreversible damage. 15 minutes. The margin had been that thin. Warm IV fluids, thermal blanket, pain medication. The woman sat beside me the entire time, holding my hand. Who are you? I finally asked. The woman smiled sadly. You don't remember me. I looked, really looked. Then Florence. My mother, the grandmother Amber said, had moved to Europe. I never went anywhere. I've been looking for you for 7 years. Dr. Coleman cleared me at 12:25. You're stable, no permanent damage, but rest. Stay warm. Follow up tomorrow. She hesitated. By law, I'm required to report this. Elder abuse. Endangerment. Florence nodded. We'll be filing criminal charges as well. I sat up, pulled out the IV, wrapped myself in the hospital blanket. I felt not fully recovered, but no longer disappearing. I want to go back. Florence blinked. Eleanor, you need rest. I want to go back to that house. I want to face her. I want all 200 of those people to know what happened. My voice grew stronger, warmth returning. And with it, anger. She called me a freeloader. In front of everyone, she locked me outside. I looked at Florence Raymond Franklin. I've been silent for 7 years. Tonight I will not be silent. Florence looked at me, really looked into my eyes, and I saw something I had not seen in anyone's eyes for so long. Respect. She nodded. Then we go back, together. Raymond opened his briefcase. I have the evidence, the deed, the letters, everything. And a voice called from the waiting room. I have this. A woman stepped forward. Early 40s. Professional. I recognized her from the party. Dr. Lydia Mitchell, private investigator hired by Mrs. Whitmore. She held up her phone. I recorded everything. Audio and video, Amber's speech. Blake forcing you outside, the door locking, all of it. Florence looked at me. Are you sure? I thought about the last 7 years. The silence. The invisibility. I thought about Charles. What he would want me to do. Let's go, I said. It's time they learned who really owns that house. We drove back to 127 Willow Creek Lane. It was 12:40. The party was still going. Lights, music, 200 people. Still there. Perfect. I wanted all of them to see this. Franklin parked at the curb. Helped me out. I wrapped myself in the hospital blanket, the patient wristband still on my arm, steel proof. Florence took my arm. Steady. Strong. Raymond carried the briefcase. Dr. Mitchell held her phone ready, and we walked to the door. Florence knocked. 3 times. Steel. Decisive. The kind of knock that commands open. Now, before I tell you what happened when that door opened, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had someone fight for you when you could not fight for yourself? Have you ever witnessed justice finally arrive after years of waiting? Drop a comment below and tell me your thoughts. I want to know you are still here with me. And a quick note, the story ahead contains some dramatized elements for narrative purposes. If that does not sit well with you, feel free to stop here. For the first time in 7 years, I saw fear. Real fear. Blake Hendricks, 6'2", former college athlete, corporate vice president, stood in that doorway looking absolutely terrified. This was the door he had shoved me through, the door he had locked, and now I was walking back through it, on my terms. Blake started to speak. "What the—" Florence cut him off. "My name is Florence Whitmore. I am Eleanor Pembroke's mother, and I own this house." She did not ask permission. She walked straight in. Raymond followed. Dr. Mitchell. Franklin steadied me as I stepped through. I walked through that door, wrapped in a hospital blanket, the patient wristband visible on my arm, my bandaged feet bare. Into the living room. 200 faces turned. The music was still playing. Someone turned it off. Silence descended. Florence stood in the center of the room, 80 years old. She commanded the space like a general. "Good evening. I apologize for the interruption. My name is Florence Whitmore. I am Eleanor Pembroke's mother, and I own this house." Whispers rose. Amber appeared from the dining room, her face flushed. "Grandma Florence, what are you—" Florence raised one hand. Amber went silent. "How many people here saw Eleanor locked outside tonight?" Hands slowly rose, about 150 out of 200. How many of you thought that was wrong? Fewer hands, about 50. Guilt. How many of you did something about it? 1 hand. Carol Winters. Florence nodded. "Thank you, Carol, for trying and for calling me." She turned back to the room. Eleanor was outside for 13 minutes in -15 degrees. We just came from the emergency room. Mild hypothermia, frostbite. The doctor said 15 more minutes and she would have lost function in her toes. Gasps, whispers. My daughter nearly lost part of her body on New Year's Eve because she asked for a seat at the table. Amber tried. She was causing a scene. I spoke, my voice hoarse but clear. I asked where my seat was, after cooking for 7 days, after preparing this entire party. I looked at 200 faces, and my daughter said, "There is no seat here for freeloaders. Your presence is ruining the elegance. Go outside and learn gratitude. Learn to respect the owners of this house." I paused. The owners of this house. She called herself the owner of my mother's house. Raymond stepped forward, opened the briefcase. "Ladies and gentlemen, for the record," he pulled out a document, held it high. "This property, 127 Willow Creek Lane, was purchased by Florence Whitmore in 1992. The deed has remained in her name for 35 years. He showed the deed, red stamp bright. Florence's name clear. Amber's face went white. "That's not possible. Dad paid—" Raymond interrupted. "Charles Pembroke paid utilities and maintenance. Ownership was never transferred. This is Florence's house." Blake stammered. "I didn't know." Florence's voice went cold. "You've been living in my house rent-free for 7 years. As of tonight, I'm exercising my ownership rights. You have 14 days to vacate." Florence signaled. Raymond pulled out a stack of envelopes, bound with a rubber band. 91 letters, sent over 7 years, Every birthday, every holiday, all returned to sender. She looked straight at Amber. You told Eleanor I had moved to Europe, that I didn't want contact, but I never left Connecticut. I've been 100 miles away, searching for her. Amber's voice broke. I was just protecting. You intercepted my letters. You wrote, return to sender, and sent them back. You isolated her. You lied. Florence's voice caught. Just for a second. You told my daughter I had abandoned her, and she believed you. For 7 years. Gerald Harrison. Blake's CEO stood. Blake, his voice flat. I don't even know what to say. Blake turned, panicking. Sir, I didn't know about the house, I swear. But you locked an elderly woman outside in deadly cold? I saw it. We all saw it. Harrison looked around the room. I'm leaving. Anyone with a conscience should do the same. He walked out. 50 people immediately followed. Amber stood in the shrinking room. 150 left. 50 stayed, watching. And Raymond was not finished. He pulled out another file. There's more, he said. Florence looked at Amber, her eyes like cold steel. Tell them about the trust fund, Amber. Amber's face went from white to gray, and I knew. Things were about to get much worse for her. Raymond did not ask permission to continue. He stepped to the coffee table and laid out documents like a prosecutor building an airtight case. Charles Pembroke established a trust fund for Eleanor after his death, $850,000, monthly payments to ensure her lifetime security. He held up a document. 3 months after Charles died, someone redirected that fund into a joint account. This required Eleanor's signature. He showed the signature page. Eleanor's name. Shaky handwriting. Written in grief. I remembered. Amber placing the paper in front of me. Just trust stuff, Mom. But Raymond continued. The signature on the transfer form, the form moving the money into Amber and Blake's account, is forged. He showed 2 signatures side by side. Different, obviously. Amber Hendricks forged her mother's signature. Stole the entire amount. That is embezzlement. That is fraud. Blake turned to Amber, his face white. You said your mother agreed. Amber's voice broke. She didn't need it. We needed... She stopped, realized she had just confessed. Blake stepped away from her. Dr. Mitchell stepped forward from the crowd. I am Dr. Lydia Mitchell, private investigator hired by Mrs. Whitmore. She held up her phone. I attended this party as a guest. I have been recording since 7 o'clock. I have audio and video evidence of verbal abuse toward Eleanor Pembroke, public humiliation, Blake Hendricks using force to remove her, forcing the victim into life-threatening cold, endangering an elderly person in front of witnesses. This constitutes elder abuse under Connecticut law. Amber panicked. You can't, that's illegal. Dr. Mitchell's voice stayed calm. Connecticut is a one-party consent state. I consented. This recording is admissible in court. A woman near the fireplace, Patricia Dalton, pulled out her phone. I'm calling the police. This is elder abuse. We all witnessed it. Amber lunged forward. No, you can't. Another guest phone already out. I'm calling too. We should have called when you locked her out. 3 more phones. 5, 10. Within 2 minutes, a dozen calls to 911 had been made. Sirens distant, getting closer. 2 officers arrived. Officer David Grant and Jennifer Walsh. Professional. Calm. Officer Grant spoke. We received multiple reports of elder abuse. Florence stepped forward. Yes. My daughter Eleanor was locked outside in deadly cold for 13 minutes. We have medical records, video evidence, and witnesses. Officer Walsh approached me. Ma'am, are you Eleanor Pembroke? I nodded. Are you safe now? I'm safe. I'm with my mother. Officer Grant turned to Amber and Blake. We need statements from both of you. And we're opening an investigation into elder abuse and financial fraud. Blake's voice cracked. I'll cooperate. Amber sobbed. Real tears now. This is my house. My mother is lying. Officer Grant's tone stayed level. Ma'am, the deed is in Mrs. Whitmore's name. This is not your house, and you're facing criminal charges. "We're taking both of you in for questioning," Officer Walsh said. She read them their rights, right there in front of 100 people. "You have the right to remain silent." Amber and Blake were escorted out. Amber screamed, "Mom, tell them you're lying." I looked at her, the daughter I had raised, the woman who had called me a freeloader. I spoke quietly but clearly. "I'm tired of lying to protect you, Amber." That was the last thing I said to her that night. The door closed, the sirens faded. The remaining guests left, quickly, quietly, shame on their faces. By 1:15, the house was empty. Just me, Florence, Raymond, Franklin, Dr. Mitchell, Carol. We stood in the living room. The party decorations are still there. Champagne glasses abandoned. The 11-foot tree is still blinking red and gold. Florence looked at me. "What do you want to do?" I looked around. The house I had lived in for 35 years, where I had raised Amber, where Charles and I had been happy, where I had been a wife, a mother, a person, and where for 7 years I had been erased. "I want to leave here," I said. "I never want to see this place again." Florence nodded, as if she understood everything. "Then let's go home, our real home." But first, I looked at Carol. "Can I have 5 minutes alone?" They stepped outside, gave me space. I walked through the house one last time. 5 minutes, that was all I needed. To say goodbye to a house, to say goodbye to a life. The living room first, the 11-foot tree still blinked red and gold. 200 champagne glasses sat abandoned on tables. I looked at the spot where I had stood and asked, "Where is my seat?" This was where I had found my voice, even if only for 3 minutes, the kitchen. I had cooked thousands of meals here, the sink where I had washed dishes during the party. I remembered Amber placing papers in front of me. "Just trust stuff, Mom," while she forged my signature. I took the apron hanging on the hook, folded it, left it on the counter. I was not anyone's cook anymore. The master bedroom. The bed Charles and I had shared for 28 years. Our wedding photo on the nightstand. Charles smiling. I picked it up. "I'm sorry," I said to the photo. "I let our daughter become this, but I think you'd understand. You always said, 'Ellie, you deserve to be happy.'" I'm trying to believe that now. I set the photo down, left it on the nightstand. This belongs to this house, to the past. Amber's childhood bedroom. Pink wallpaper faded now, a bookshelf with children's books still on it. I remembered Amber at 5, holding a stuffed bear. "Mommy, I love you so much." I sat on the bed. That child was gone. Or maybe she had never existed. I did not know anymore. I opened the nightstand drawer, and there it was, the $67 brooch, the last gift Charles had given me. Amber had told me she pawned it, but she had kept it, hidden it. I held it in my palm, thought about putting it in my pocket. Then I set it on the bed. This isn't mine anymore. It isn't yours either. It belongs to a marriage that ended, a family that broke. The front porch, where I had stood barefoot in the snow. The snow had melted. Water pooled on the wood. I stood there for 30 seconds. "I almost died here," I said quietly. But I didn't, and that's all that matters. I walked to the front door, opened it, stepped outside, closed it behind me, did not look back. Florence was waiting by the car. "Are you ready?" I nodded. "I'm ready." Inside the Rolls-Royce, I looked out the window as Franklin drove. Dark streets, snow melting. Florence took my hand. "You don't have to say anything. I understand." "Thank you," I said, "for not giving up, for finding me." Florence's voice was soft. "I could never give up. You're my daughter." Daughter. The word sounded strange. Eleanor was someone's daughter, not someone's mother, just a daughter. At 3 a.m, we arrived at 42 Ashwood Terrace. The lights were on, the scent of jasmine, old books, lavender. Florence opened the door. "Your room is upstairs, second door on the left." I kept it ready. I climbed the stairs. Each step creaked. a sound I had forgotten. The room was small, a single bed, a bookshelf, a window overlooking the garden. I sat on the bed. The springs squeaked. For 35 years, I had thought 127 Willow Creek was home. But home is not walls. Home is where someone calls your name with love. And tonight, after 7 years, I had finally come home. I lay down, looked at the ceiling, the same ceiling from my childhood. I closed my eyes. I slept 18 hours. And when I woke, my new life had begun. I woke at 3 in the afternoon on January 1st. For a moment, I did not know where I was. The ceiling above me was painted pale blue, not the cream I had stared at for 7 years. The walls held framed watercolors of wildflowers, not the bare beige I had scrubbed and repainted twice at Amber's demand. The quilt over me smelled faintly of lavender and something else I could not name at first. Then I remembered. Jasmine. My mother grew jasmine in the garden when I was a child. I was at 42 Ashwood Terrace. I was in my childhood bedroom. I was home. Florence knocked softly and came in with a tray. Soup. Thick vegetable soup with crusty bread and butter. She set it on the nightstand and sat on the edge of the bed. Her hand covered mine. She did not ask how I felt. She did not ask what I needed. She simply waited. I ate the soup slowly. It tasted like safety, like being seen, like being loved without condition or cost. When I finished, Florence took the tray and said she would let me rest. I slept another 6 hours. The next morning, January 2nd, Raymond called. Blake Hendricks had been fired. The company had issued a statement citing conduct unbecoming of an executive. The board had acted within 12 hours of the party. Gerald Harrison had personally ensured Blake would never work in that industry again. Florence stood in the doorway while I listened to Raymond's voice on speaker. She did not smile. She did not celebrate. She simply nodded once as if justice were not a surprise but an inevitability she had engineered. On January 5th, Raymond called again. The charges were official: elder abuse, financial exploitation, forgery, larceny in the first degree. The district attorney had reviewed the evidence, the deed, the 91 letters, the recording doctor. Mitchell had provided the hospital report documenting hypothermia and frostbite and determined the case was strong. A court date was set for June 15th, 6 months away. Raymond said the prosecution was confident. Florence said she would be in the courtroom. I said nothing. I was still learning how to breathe without waiting for the next humiliation. On January 8th, the eviction order was executed. Amber and Blake were given 72 hours to vacate 127 Willow Creek Lane. On January 9th, the sheriff oversaw their removal. They moved to a rented house 80 miles away near Blake's parents. I did not ask for details. I did not need to know. The house that had been my prison was empty now, waiting to become someone else's home. On January 15th, Emily came to visit. She was 8 years old, small for her age, with dark curls and eyes that looked too serious. She sat on the couch in Florence's living room and stared at her hands. Florence brought cookies and milk, then quietly left us alone. I sat beside Emily and waited. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was so quiet I had to lean closer to hear. She asked if I was going away again. She asked if her mother had done something bad. She asked if she would have to leave too. I took her hands in mine. They were cold even though the room was warm. I told her the truth. I told her that her mother had hurt me and that hurt was real, but that did not mean Emily was bad or responsible. I told her I loved her. I told her I would never abandon her. I told her that sometimes families break, and sometimes they have to be rebuilt in new shapes, and that she and I would figure out what our shape looked like together. She cried then, and I held her. Florence came back in and sat with us. Later, Raymond arrived with papers. He explained that Amber's custody would be reviewed. There would be hearings. There would be evaluations. Florence had already hired a family attorney to help me pursue shared custody, or if necessary, primary custody. Emily would not be taken from me again. I would fight. And this time, I would not fight alone. February was the month I began therapy with Dr. Rebecca Morris. Her office was small, with leather chairs and a box of tissues on the table between us. She asked me to tell her about my daughter. I cried for 40 minutes without stopping. When the session ended, I apologized. She gently shook her head and said I never had to apologize for crying there. Her office was a safe place. I did not yet understand what that meant, but I wanted to. By the 5th session, she asked why I had not left sooner. I told her the truth. I believed silence was love. I believed enduring meant caring. I believed a mother's role was to absorb whatever her child could not carry. Dr. Morris leaned forward and said words that stayed with me. Silence is not love. Silence is survival. I had survived. Now it was time to live. Emily began visiting every week. Florence arranged supervised visits in the living room at 42 Ashwood Terrace. We baked cookies, read picture books, and walked through the garden, talking about small things. School, her favorite color, whether clouds had names. One afternoon, she asked if I was angry at her mother. I told her I was sad, but that sadness was mine to carry, not hers. She hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. I held her just as tightly, thinking of all the years I had not been allowed to. In March, Carol Winters came with a basket of muffins and tears in her eyes. She said she was sorry. For 7 years, she had sensed something was wrong. She had watched me fade and done nothing. I invited her in and told her she had called my mother. She'd saved my life. That mattered more than the delay. Carol wept and said she should have acted sooner. I told her she acted when it counted. That was enough. I began volunteering at a shelter for victims of domestic violence. At first, I said little. I listened, folded laundry, served meals. Gradually, I shared my story in small groups. I told them abuse does not always come from a spouse. Sometimes it comes from a child wrapped in the language of family, duty, and love. The women understood. Some cried, some thanked me. Each time I left feeling less hollow. In April, we had a custody hearing. I testified about 7 years of isolation, financial exploitation, psychological control, and the night I was locked outside in the snow. Emily's therapist said Emily showed anxiety and felt safer with me. Amber's lawyer argued biology meant rights. The judge replied that rights require responsibility. The ruling was shared custody. Emily would stay with me 3 days a week under supervision, transitioning to unsupervised visits. Amber would have supervised visitation only until the criminal case concluded. I walked out holding Florence's arm. I had not won everything, but I had won enough. In May, Emily and I planted tomatoes in Florence's garden. She asked when she could stay overnight. I told her soon. At my 10th therapy session, I spoke about Amber without crying. I said she had abused me. I said I forgave her. I also said I did not trust her and might never again. Dr. Morris called that progress. I believed her. On June 10th, Raymond confirmed the trial date June 15th. He asked if I would deliver a victim impact statement. I said yes. On June 14th, I wrote it by hand at the kitchen table while Florence sat beside me. My voice trembled when I read it aloud, but I did not stop. She squeezed my hand and said I was stronger than I knew. On June 15th, I stood outside the courtroom. Through the glass, I saw Amber at the defense table, small and tired. She looked up and met my eyes. I did not look away. I did not flinch. I thought the words I would soon say, "I am not afraid of you anymore." The door opened. I stepped inside, ready. Judge Victoria Harper, 50 years old, steel-rimmed glasses, a voice that held no room for negotiation. She had reviewed the case file for 3 weeks. Today was sentencing day. The courtroom held 100 people. Amber and Blake sat at the defense table. I sat in the front row with Florence and Raymond. Judge Harper said she had reviewed the evidence carefully. 91 letters, the recordings, the medical records, the forged signature, 200 witnesses. She said this was one of the most severe cases of elder abuse she had ever seen. She turned to Amber. 18 months suspended to probation with strict conditions, 500 hours of community service, full restitution of $850,000 plus interest. Custody of Emily remains supervised until probation is complete. Amber began to cry. She said, "Please forgive me." Judge Harper cut her off. "You had 7 years to apologize. It is too late now." Blake received 12 months probation and 200 hours of community service. He said quietly, "I am sorry, Mrs. Pembroke." I locked the door. and that is unforgivable. Judge Harper asked if I wanted to make a victim impact statement. I stood and walked to the podium. I looked directly at Amber. She would not look back. I said, "My name is Eleanor Pembroke. I am 57 years old. For 7 years, I was my daughter's victim. She called me a freeloader in front of 200 people. She locked me outside in deadly cold. She stole $850,000. She lied and told me my mother had abandoned me. But the worst thing she did was make me believe I was not worthy of love. I said, I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. Forgiveness does not mean trust. It does not mean I want you in my life. It means I am setting myself free from you." I sat down. The courtroom was silent. In July, I sold 127 Willow Creek Lane. A young couple with a baby girl bought it. I signed the papers without ever going back. I hoped they would be happier there. Emily stayed with me 3 days a week. We baked, we gardened. I volunteered at the shelter twice a week. Therapy continued once a month. On Florence's 81st birthday, Emily made her a card. In August, we harvested tomatoes. Emily held one up and shouted, "Look, Grandma Ellie, it is as big as a ball." I laughed so hard I cried. On December 31st, 2024, 1 year after the night I was locked outside, we gathered at 42 Ashwood Terrace. A small party. 6 people. Florence, Emily, Carol Raymond, Dr. Mitchell, and Franklin. There was a small tree. The lights were warm. The fireplace crackled. Emily wore a blue dress. She said, "Grandma Ellie, this year I get to stay up for the countdown." I told her, "Yes, sweetheart. This year I'm not going anywhere." At 11:50, I stood by the window and looked out at the snow falling gently. Florence asked what I was thinking. I told her that 1 year ago at this moment I had been standing outside, barefoot, in -15 degrees. I thought I was going to die. Florence took my hand. She said, "But you did not." At 11:58, we counted down together. 10, 9, 8. Emily squeezed my hand and said, "I love you." 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year. Midnight. Fireworks outside. Everyone hugged. Emily wrapped her arms around me. I looked out the window. Snow falling. Beautiful. Not cold anymore. Not frightening. Just snow. I stepped out onto the porch in my warm coat and boots. I stood under the snow for 30 seconds. Florence came out and asked if I was okay. I told her I just needed to prove to myself that snow was not scary anymore. I stepped back inside, closed the door, warm. 1 year ago on New Year's Eve, I stood outside in deadly cold, locked out, called a freeloader, nearly dead. Tonight I am standing inside, loved, safe, home. And this time when midnight came, I was not alone. I was home. And to you listening to this story, remember this. Silence is not love. Silence is survival. I survived 7 years by staying quiet, believing that enduring abuse from my own daughter was my duty as a mother. I was wrong. God gave us voices not to stay silent, but to speak up when we are being harmed, even if the person harming us is family. Do not be like me. Do not wait 7 years. Do not wait until you are locked outside in the snow. If someone in your family treats you like a servant, steals from you, or makes you feel worthless, speak up. You deserve love, respect, and safety, no matter who is hurting you. These grandma stories are not just mine. I have met so many others who lived through similar pain. Family drama stories can be devastating, but they remind us we are not alone. It is never too late to reclaim your life. This is my story. I share it hoping someone out there will find the courage to leave before it is too late. Many grandma stories and family drama stories carry the same lesson. Speaking up is not betrayal, it is self-preservation. If this story moved, you leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it. If you believe in grandma stories and family drama stories that empower and heal, subscribe to our channel. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. Before you go, a reminder, the stories ahead may contain dramatized elements crafted to inspire reflection. If this does not resonate with you, feel free to explore other content. May you always find your way home.